Hi, and welcome to Kane's Top 5 Under 5, the top 5 most important stories in cybersecurity for June 2024. Our first story comes from the American Bar Association's Tort Trial and Insurance Practice section, which says, and I quote, materiality analysis doesn't require risk quantification, fair model, but rather reasonable assessments of risk, considering, among others, the financial, reputational, and operational impact. I know everybody loves the idea of fair for risk quantification, but here's the thing. The bar is now telling companies that are having trouble figuring out materiality that they don't need to use formal quantitative methods. And similarly, they're saying that their attorneys will defend CISOs who didn't use a formal model like FAIR if the SEC brings a civil suit. Qualitative risk measurements are adequate. So if you're at a company that's trying to figure out how to measure all the things, take a step back and remember the perfect is the enemy of the good. And right now, qualitative is good enough. Our second story comes from Harvard's Law School, which has some great questions that companies should be internally preparing for before their audit committees or their investors ask. As a CISO, I love that they're recommending that companies consider cyber threats as a part of a company's larger risk management process, and the company should have a means of testing, reviewing, and assuring the controls they're using actually work. Part of the reason I'm at Hyperproof is that so many companies struggle with manual processes to determine if their controls work. Harvard is also recommending that companies ensure they have oversight of generative AI, among other risks like committee skill sets, ethics, and culture. In a related story about the lack of oversight of AI, our third story is from a survey by ISS Corporate, which found less than 2% of S&P 500 companies have explicit board or committee oversight of AI, and less than 1% have an AI ethics board. Now, sure, more companies said they had experts on their board with AI expertise, but expertise is not the same as oversight. And the SEC has been warning heavily about AI washing, which can be a product of over-imaginative sales or marketing teams coupled with a lack of oversight. I'd expect with all the regulatory oversight and lawmaking that this is going to create problems for companies later this year, whether it's in the European Union or in Delaware's Chancery Court. Our fourth story is from Germany, whose DPA lined up their non-binding recommendations for AI with what the French DPA and what the larger EU are already doing. And it turns out it's all GDPR all of the time. This matters because GDPR is extraterritorial. And so companies that are developing or deploying AI in places that aren't the EU are still affected. Companies will need to make sure that they have training around data scraping and processing and evidence of control effectiveness showing that their employees are completing that training and following the company's procedures. On a positive note, with the exception of the Dutch, who are doing their own thing, most of the EU is working towards a common compliance standard for the use of AI. And finally, our fifth story is out of Colorado, which recently passed their Consumer Protections for Artificial Intelligence law. This is currently the most comprehensive and potentially burdensome law about AI in the United States. Like the EU AI Act, it focuses on the developers and the deployers of high risk systems, but unlike the AI Act, there are notification requirements in there, as well as a way for job applicants to opt out of AI processing of their job applications, which may be very difficult for employers to implement and watch at scale. Thanks for watching today, and if you're going to be at Gartner's Security and Risk Conference in DC, stop by the Hyperproof booth and say hello.